Good morning, dear students. This is your Sudha ma'am. Welcome to the second session of lesson 10, that is nutrition in plants. In our previous session, we have studied about contributions of various scientists, raw materials needed in synthesis, and concepts like roots absorb water from soil and gaseous exchange takes place by stomata. In this session, we are studying an activity which reveals us the presence of starch and macronutrients and micronutrients needed for plants, and finally about the other modes of nutrition in plants. Let's enter into our today's topic, that is photosynthesis. Already we have learnt about the process of food making in plants, that is photosynthesis, and the raw materials needed for photosynthesis are carbon dioxide, water, chlorophyll and sunlight. By using these materials, the plants prepare glucose and release oxygen into the atmosphere. This glucose is used for the plants for their metabolic activities, and the excess of glucose is stored in the form of starch. So they prepare glucose and they use for their metabolic activities, and whatever the excess amount of glucose is there, that is stored in the form of starch, and this starch is stored in their fruits, seeds, leaves, roots, etc. And to test the presence of starch, let's do an activity. Take a potato, peel off its skin and make it into halves or slices and place them on a table. Now pour 2-3 drops of iodine solution on the pieces of potato. The color of the potato changes into bluish black. The change in the color of potato indicates the presence of starch. By this experiment, we can conclude that starch is present in the plant parts. Do plants produce only the starch? No. Apart from starch, plants also prepare the other nutrients like proteins, fats, vitamins and minerals. To prepare these nutrients, plants also require some macronutrients and micronutrients. Generally, we know about the nutrients like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins and minerals are plants. And to prepare them, they require some macronutrients and micronutrients. Let's discuss about the macronutrients. These are essential for the growth and development of the plant. And the primary macronutrients are nitrogen and potassium. NPK, generally we call them NPK, and these are very much required for the plants for their growth and development. Nitrogen plays a fundamental role in energy metabolism and protein synthesis. The other macronutrients required for plants are magnesium, sulfur and calcium. And coming to the micronutrients, plants require many other nutrients, but these are needed in minute quantities. The other nutrients also required by plants, but in minute quantity, hence called micronutrients. Example: boron, chlorine, copper, iron, manganese, molybdenum, zinc, etc. And plants absorb these nutrients from the soil through their roots. So these are absorbed by plants through their roots from the soil. And moving on to the other modes of nutrition in plants. Already we know about autotrophic mode of nutrition, in which plants prepare their own food by the process of photosynthesis. But some plants are there which are called non-green plants. They do not prepare their own food. They cannot prepare their own food. So they depend on others for their food, what we call them hetero. Hetero means others, troph means food. The organisms which depend on others for food are called heterotrophs. And in this, we are learning about parasites and saprophytes. Parasites are the plants, generally non-green plants. Due to the absence of chlorophyll, they cannot make their own food. Example, cuscuta. Cuscuta is a thread-like plant. It doesn't possess any leaves and hence chlorophyll is absent. So, cuscuta other plants, what we call them host plants. And the cuscuta develops some special roots called haustoria. And these haustoria, it penetrate into the tissues of the host plant and absorb food material from them. Hence called parasitic plant. So, it develops a root-like structures called haustoria. Through the haustoria, it penetrate into the host body, host tissues, and it absorb the nutrients from them. So, in this way, it derives its nutrition and hence called parasitic plant. Head lice, mosquito, leech, examples are the examples of animal parasites. They suck the blood from other organisms. And moving on to the next type of nutrition, that is saprophytic mode of nutrition. These are the organisms take food from dead and decaying organic matter. These organisms take their food from dead and decaying organic matter like fallen leaves, animals, dead plants, etc. Example, mushroom. And on the pieces of stale bread, generally we find some black or greyish color spots, and these are also non-green plants called fungi. Generally in Telugu we will call it as booze patindi, like that. One type of non-green plants called fungus, and they do not contain chlorophyll. So, they absorb organic material from the decaying matter, that is from the bread they derive their food. So, this mode of nutrition from which the organisms take their food from decaying matter, dead and decaying matter is called saprophytic mode of nutrition. And the next one is insectivorous plants. Generally, we know that the animals feed on plants, but here the plants trap the insects. They kill the insects. What for? Generally, these plants are green in color. That means they can prepare their own food by photosynthesis. But as they are growing in nitrogen deficient soils, they meet their nitrogen requirements by trapping. Generally, nitrogen is very much essential for the growth and protein synthesis. So, growth and development of the plants. But as these plants are growing in nitrogen deficient soils, so they take the nitrogen from the insects by trapping and killing them. They take the nitrogen. Generally, in the air, 78% of nitrogen is present, but plants cannot absorb the atmospheric nitrogen directly. So, they take from the insects. Leaves of these plants are specially modified to trap the insects. You can observe in the given figures, the leaves are modified into some pitcher-like structures in the second diagram, and in the first figure, it is like a shape in which it is trapping the insect. Both the halves will be closed. And these plants are called insectivorous plants. Example, Venus flytrap, Drosera, Utricularia, etc. And the other mode of nutrition is symbiosis. Symbiosis means mutual benefit. By helping each other, these organisms depend on each other, and by helping each other, both will get benefit. What we call it as symbiosis. For example, the roots of leguminous plants, that is dal plants, dal family, like kandipappu, chanagapappu, minapappu, red gram, black gram, green gram, Bengal gram, etc. And bean plants, peas, etc. All these comes under leguminous plants. Their roots have nodules called root nodules in which rhizobium bacteria grows. These plants provide food and shelter to the bacteria, and in return the bacteria fixes atmospheric nitrogen for the plants. So in return bacteria gives atmospheric nitrogen. Already I told you cannot absorb the atmospheric nitrogen. So this bacteria fixes the nitrogen in the form of nitrates and nitrites. In this way both will get benefit. Leguminous plants provide food and shelter to the bacteria, and bacteria fixes the nitrogen for the plant. And this association is called symbiosis. Let us summarize today's topics. Today we have learnt about starch test, micro and macronutrients required for the plants, and heterotrophic mode of nutrition, under which we learnt about parasites, saprophytes, insectivorous plants, and symbiosis. Let's all make our environment green by planting more and more trees, so that we will never worry about oxygen and food. So plants provide us oxygen and food, which are very, very essential for our survival. Without those two we cannot survive. So those are provided by plants to us. So what we have to do? We have to plant more trees so that to make our easier. So with this I conclude this lesson. Meet you in the next session.